of hemp makes 20 barrels of oil. No need for pesticides to poison all our soil. People got no food, they got no clothes, they got no rest. Right now it's time for hemp.
Thank you for taking Time for Hemp. I am your host, Casper Leitch. You are listening to Time for Hemp all over the internet on Tumblr, SoundCloud, iTunes, iHeartRadio, and now we are on the Roku TV network. So there's a lot of outlets there on the internet where you can enjoy the content that the many people on the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network produce. And it always is great when you share us with your friends. It is Monday, and on Monday we like to focus on all the healthy things that cannabis can do for the body's mind and spirit. And we bring on to the show each Monday Mary Lynn Mathry and Al Byrne from Patients at a Time. Mary Lynn is on holiday today, and Al is bringing with him a wonderful friend that he is going to be sharing with our audience. I also want to remind you, if you go to their website, there's a lot of great information there that you can review. And if you're in the field of healthcare, you can get accreditation. Isn't that right, Al?
It is indeed, Casper, and thank you for inviting Patients at a Time on Healthy Mondays again. It's always a pleasure. Yeah, folks, you can go to any number of websites. I'll start you off with a couple. One would be medicalcannabis.com. The other would be patientsatatime.org. At either location, you're going to find a wealth of information about the therapeutic value of cannabis and the necessary knowledge that you'll need to understand the interface between medical cannabis and your own endocannabinoid system. And then if you're a healthcare professional, as Casper indicated, pharmacist, social worker, nurse, doctor, whatever, you can get accreditation for taking courses for a small fee at themedicalcannabisinstitute.org. I'll repeat that. It's themedicalcannabisinstitute.org. Check it out. Look it over. I think you'll find it informative. And since many thousands of your patients across the globe here and in the United States, and I'm just speaking to doctors and nurses specifically, many thousands of your patients use cannabis medically and recreationally. And if you don't know anything about it, then you're doing your job. So you need to get to medicalcannabisinstitute.org and get some first-class AMA, ANA approved education for yourself and your cohorts. And so Patients at a Time has been around for 20 years. It's a nonprofit organization. It's designated an educational charity. And our mission is the education of U.S. healthcare professionals and the U.S. public, as I said, about the therapeutic uses of cannabis and its interface with the endocannabinoid system. And on Mondays, traditionally, what we've tried to do is bring on board a cannabis expert from somewhere around the globe to discuss with us the various areas of medical cannabis that we all have to deal with and will deal with in the future. And one of those, of course, is the plant itself, and how is it grown, should it be organic, and what strain do we use, and indoor and outdoor, and hydroponic and soil, and the questions go on, and which strain is best for which particular disease or malady, lots and lots to be learned. So to begin the process, and we've got my friend here right next to me. Mary Lynn is not here today, so it's just me and Steve Davis, who is an acclaimed we're talking here again, remind everybody that's listening around the world, we talk medical cannabis here. Now, certainly everything includes the recreational growing as well, but we're on a medical educational. So, Steve, welcome. How are you today?
Thank you. I'm doing great, Al, and I want to start by saying that Al Byrne and Mary Lynn Mathry are probably the most statured, ethical, and legitimate medical cannabis patient and medical cannabis education people that have been working for decades. I've been a medical cannabis grower and patient for at least 25 years and have met almost all of the people who claim to be on the side of medical cannabis, who claim to be legalizers, who claim to care about patients, especially military veterans. And I hate to say it, but it has to be said that many of the people in the so-called medical cannabis movement are not really the most ethical or fun people in the world, and that's all I'm going to say about that. But I can tell you one thing. Al Byrne and Mary Lynn Mathry have been at the forefront of medical cannabis advocacy for many decades. They're the only people in North America that put on scientifically based clinical cannabis conferences where you can find out things about cannabis that are the absolute cutting edge information. These are also people, Al and Mary Lynn, who've never really taken a penny for themselves. They've never been profiteers in this movement. They've given a heck of a lot more than they've received. They are a nonprofit. They do need financial assistance. And that kind of financial assistance doesn't go to stimulate a plush lifestyle for them, but it goes so that they can do more education for doctors, nurses, and patients, more clinical conferences. It is a wonderful organization. Patients out of time, and I really appreciate being here today.
Thank you, Steve. That's the applause is always nice, and it's nice to be called ethical. Well, it's not that's a word that describes so few people, I think, in politics and law enforcement, and even in our healthcare professionals. I think that the treatment of the way healthcare professionals have not educated themselves about the medical use of cannabis is medically unethical. What do you think?
Well, I can give you a quick and brief example from my own life, because my background right now is as a medical cannabis professional grower and writer and researcher about how to grow the best medical cannabis for your needs. But I'm going to tell you right now, when I started having back problems, and the regular doctors that I went to, 5 different doctors in 5 different health plans, said the only thing that can be done for me is to give me prescription pharmaceuticals that were addictive, ineffective, bad for me in every way, and potentially fatal, or surgery. That's all they said to me. And after a certain point, I had educated myself, and I asked them about medical cannabis, and they all said, it's bad, it doesn't work, it's addictive, it'll hurt your lungs, it'll cloud up your mind, it's illegal, I won't even begin to discuss it with you. Well, at the same moment, those same doctors were addicting me to pharmaceuticals, including at one point they were giving me morphine that I could administer at home, which was in violation of DEA regs. I really don't have a whole lot of respect for the majority of the regular medical profession, but if you can find a doctor or a nurse or a psychologist, anybody in the medical mainstream who understands the truth about marijuana and will work with you to use marijuana as a medicine, they have courage. They are challenging the dominant paradigm in their profession. They're risking, in some cases, their medical license, like what happened to the original cannabis doctor pioneer, Dr. Todd Micarea in California. He helped thousands of people to qualify for medical cannabis under Proposition 215. And you know what his reward was? His reward was to be relentlessly pursued and hounded and driven nearly insane and have his medical license taken away from him by other doctors in California that were jealous of his success and who were prejudiced against nature's most healing medicine.
Yeah, and Todd was a member, he's deceased now, but he was a member of Patients at a Time's Board of Advisors. He was a true humanitarian. If you're really interested in some wonderful background, you look up Todd Micarea. That's Mikuria, Micarea, MD. You look up the marijuana papers?
Yes.
Yeah, the marijuana papers. What he did was he went back in time in history, and he gathered up all of the known scientific studies that have been published, or at least the most important ones that have been studied from, say, beginning of time through I think it was like the mid-1970s or something like that.
That's right.
Am I close?
That's right.
So, Todd Micarea, yeah. Steve, why don't we get to your background? You started out as a patient. You got off the pharmaceuticals. I take it you replaced that with cannabis, And then you started growing your own. How do you transition here?
That's right, and that's what I want to encourage everybody to think of is this: that just like helper dogs and other helper animals, as well as gardening regular food crops, is therapeutic for people who are elderly, people who are military veterans, people who have various illnesses. Growing marijuana is one of the most helpful things that you can do for yourself, and I'm going to explain why. What happened with me is that when I asked those doctors if they could just find a way to get me off of the stupid, toxic pharmaceuticals, and they said no. And then I knew a person that had marijuana. They gave me a joint, and my back pain, which basically had crippled me, went away. And from that day on, I was on a path to be able to do physical therapy, yoga, hardcore exercise, and to gradually wean myself off those pharmaceuticals to where today I don't use pharmaceuticals at all. I avoid them like the plague. But the thing is, I realized that marijuana was great, and then I looked at the retail marijuana market. And at the time in California, even though Prop 215 was just getting passed, the retail marijuana market was a black market in most cases, and it was about $500 an ounce for really good marijuana. And I quickly said to myself, you know what? I like gardening anyway. I want to grow this stuff myself. And it was the best decision that I ever made in my life. Growing marijuana is the ability for you to be your own pharmaceutical company. You get to grow the plants that give you the direct relief and enhancement and enjoyment that you need in your life. It takes time because, and we're going to talk about it later, you have to select the right marijuana genetics. You have to test the marijuana properly on yourself. And over time, as you grow your own marijuana and breed your own specific marijuana strains, you can get to the point where you have your own medicine that works best for you. And I want to emphasize to you in all of this discussion, marijuana is an idiosyncratic drug. What I mean by that is the same strain of marijuana. You can take 4 people, and each one of them can inhale that marijuana from the exact same pipe, the exact same moment in time. And each of them, in their own way, will have their own relationship with that marijuana. So a strain that makes one person feel pain relief might enhance another person's pain. A strain that makes one person feel like they can't get up off the couch, that they're couch locked, so to speak, another person, that strain may stimulate them. Marijuana and you are going to have a relationship when you're a grower, and that relationship gives you the power to make the best medicine for you.
Yeah, and if you, for those of you that follow the show, you'll recall, I'm sure, that we have a friend and a patient named Kathy Jordan down in Florida. She's quite famous down there because there was at one point a Kathy Jordan medical cannabis bill on the ballot, and there are 3 such tries in Florida going on as we speak, but they're not named after Kathy this time. But Kathy was diagnosed with ALS, that's Lou Gehrig's syndrome, or 30 years ago, she told me the other day. 30 years. Now, the normal lifespan of somebody after diagnosis with ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease is 3 years, maximum 5. Kathy has outlived 4 of her doctors. And she, to back up Steve's words, she attributes her success and her life, her ability to live, to a particular strain of cannabis that works for her remarkably. I mean, she certainly will tell any ALS patient, try this strain, and hopefully it'll work for you too. But again, you know, and what Steve's talking about, this is the beginning of almost like an industry that's coming on, or sub-industry, right? Because you've got all these different cannabis strains from all over the world. You've got all these different people, as Steve says. There's this amazing connect the dots thing that has to go on, and connecting the data. And I mean, now go for it. Tell us how that's going to go.
Well, if you're willing to discuss it, Al, folks, you know, Al Byrne and Mary Lynn Maffrey, because Mary Lynn is a registered nurse, the author of incredible books on the medical use of cannabis, the head of nursing organizations that are pushing the mainstream nursing and medical doctor world into the cannabis medicine world. Because of all that stuff, Al and Mary Lynn right now are trying to conceive of and start up exactly what he just talked about, which is a way for us to finally start doing scientific data collection on large numbers of people who are medical cannabis users, military veterans, so that we can find out which strains of cannabis are going to be good for this, and this, instead of just anecdotally, where you'll meet 20 medical cannabis patients at some kind of a event, and they'll say, man, this is my strain, and I love this, and this is my strain, and I love this. Al and Mary Lynn, working with the highest level of international doctors, researchers, and growers, including a very famous grower who's worked with High Times, etc. Al and Mary Lynn are putting together a research consortium that will, at the same time as it gathers data to make a more specific understanding of which marijuana strains work for which medical needs, they're also going to be helping military veterans who right now are being abandoned by the U.S. government and, frankly, by the rest of us, so that the number of suicides per day, the PTSD, the nightmares that they bring home with them from these horrible wars in the Middle East, Al and Mary Lynn single-handedly are putting this thing together. And Al, I think you might want to describe it as much as you feel like you should at this point, given that you haven't really solidified it. It's totally up to you. It's totally up to you.
Well, what Steve's talking about, and it's not just me and Mary Lynn, it's a whole gaggle of people, and Mary Lynn is part of the process. She will become the nurse that will be in charge of education for the medical doctors, nurses, social workers, and counselors that we will employ. And my hope is that we will employ almost all, well, in every case we can, we will employ veterans. Yeah, we're biased, we're prejudiced, so what? Yeah, and we're proud of it. We're gonna employ veterans. And the notion here is, and you've heard me speak to this for quite a few years now, is that as Steve here has just indicated, he was on pharmaceuticals that were very dangerous and addictive, et cetera, including morphine, which of course is an opiate, very, very serious opiate. And what we're going to do is prove by data collection and within a behavioral health hospital clinic that cannabis should be the first choice to for people that have experienced TBI, traumatic brain injury, post-traumatic stress, physical pain, amputations, phantom pain, all of this stuff. The cannabis should be the first choice, and in addition, we will take veterans, injured veterans with those kinds of problems, and we will enter them into this behavioral model methodology we're going to start up in Spokane, Washington. And we will use cannabis to wean them, if you will, under medical supervision with high-class professional staff from these narcotics and opiates by using cannabis and probably cannabis alone. With, of course, acupuncture and group therapies and all of the things that are necessary. So that's what Steve's talking about. And this is not particularly a new idea. Those history buffs could look back to, you could Google the Ohio Medical Society meeting of 1860, which I believe actually occurred in West Virginia. They were up at some resort there, but the end result of the meeting was the discussion was, well, how do we get people off of opiates? They're killing everybody. How do we do that? And the consensus of the meeting of the doctors there was that you use cannabis. So I'm gonna ask Casper to let me know how many. No, I think I already know. We're going to have to take a break right now. Steve will be back with us, of course, and. What you're listening to is Time for Hemp, and this is Healthy Mondays with Al Byrne for Patients Out of Time. Back in just 2 or 3 minutes. We'll be back.
listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. The only broadcasting network dedicated to ending the global war on drugs on iHeartRadio.
Medical clinics are the premier physician's clinic in the United States. THCF has offices all across the United States from Hawaii to Michigan. THCF Medical Clinics has helped approximately 150,000 patients obtain their medical marijuana permits to legally possess, grow, and use medical marijuana. If you have chronic pain, multiple sclerosis, or any other neurological degenerative disease, or if you have any gastrointestinal disorders such as GERD, irritable bowel syndrome, or if you have AIDS, cancer, spastic disorders, seizure disorders, or glaucoma, call us at 1-800-723-0188 or visit us online at hemp.org. Again, the number is 1-800-723-0188 and the site is hemp.org.
Check out the real deal. Follow me now, man. Listen to the real deal. If you don't know, then we tell you now. Check out the real deal. Easy. Listen to the real deal. How you mean? My Jamaican real. My Jamaican sensimedia. Jamaican herb. My Jamaican ganja. I want you to look outside yourself. Why you gotta be like that? I've no shame and pride inside. That's cool, no man. Well, what you trying to hide? There's a certain kind of love that'll soon arise. It's the most high you'll find if you free your mind. It give I inspiration in music, a higher meditation. So choose it. My Jamaican way. I say follow me, no man. My Jamaican sensei. A real sensimania. My Jamaican herb. My Jamaican ganja. Look inside yourself for what you're trying to find. A little peace of mind, sublime. If you take some time, I go inside myself. When I need some vibes, it's the most high I get. It never failed me yet. And when I make music, I use it. Hold up meditation, can't abuse it. My Jamaican real. you're trying to find. The path you should choose is there right in front of you. Take out the real deal. Listen to the real deal. Check out the real deal. Listen to the real deal. Check out the real deal.
Free? Did you say free? Free hemp? Free hemp? Free hemp video and audio? Free downloads of all the top artists, all the pot artists on planet Earth. Interviews with all the people making the movement, making the hemp movement. It's time for hemp. That's right, world. It's time for hemp. That's right, world. It's time for hemp.
Yes, it is time for hemp. I am Casper Leitch, the host of the Time for Hemp radio show and the owner of the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. We have many hosts on the network that are working diligently to get the message out that prohibition must end all around the world. And like a good joint, Time for Hemp is always best when you share us with your friends. With that said, I'm passing this joint conversation back to my joint host here on the Big Joint broadcast on Time for Hemp.
Thank you, Casper. This is Byrne back for Patients at a Time. That's who we're representing today. And we just talked about my project in Washington, which you can look up on, of course, on the internet. It's Veterans for Compassionate Care. You can shorten that up to Victor Foxtrot, CharlieCharlie.com if you're in the military. And I've got Steve Davis here with me. Steve and I are old friends. And Steve is a master grower of cannabis and a master medical cannabis grower. So, Steve, we're sort of BS through this, but let's go to the meat of the matter. The people that are listening to this show are all interested in all aspects of medical cannabis, including growing. How about you tell us how to grow it, or what should they grow, or what all these things?
All right. I want you to know, first of all, there are several things you've got to think about if you are considering whether you should grow your own cannabis or not. First of all, security, confidentiality, the laws where you live, but not just whether or not you're in Colorado, Michigan, Oregon, Washington, and California, where it's quote-unquote legal more than any other state. Even in those states, because of federal law, if you're growing marijuana, you're at risk. If you're growing cannabis, you're at risk, no matter how legal you think you are. Not only are you at risk from the police, but you are at risk from rippers, from people in your life who know what you're doing or suspect it and can make your life miserable. So I want everybody to grow their own cannabis, and it's an absolutely amazing hobby, career, and way to help your life. But if you don't have the kind of security so that you can either put plants outside and control their environment enough to get them all the way through harvest, or you can grow inside without having people who are dangerous to you asking where are those bright lights coming from, what's that skunky smell or that diesely smell, you probably shouldn't go grow cannabis. So the first thing I want you to do is to make sure that you have a safe place to grow in, either indoors or outdoors, a place you can control where you're not going to get narked on, you're not going to get discovered, you're not going to get caught, and you're not going to get robbed. Second of all, now I prefer to grow indoors for various reasons, and I'm going to tell you why. But if you are growing indoors especially, you've got to be able to control the climate, the environment, humidity, temperature. When you grow indoors, you are the god of your cannabis plants. You are Mother Nature. Outdoors, you get free sunshine, you get free carbon dioxide, which plants love, you get free oxygen, which plants love, you get free rain, which plants love, you get free wind, which plants love. It's a lot cheaper to grow outdoors. Indoors, you have to provide the light. it comes through electricity and some rather expensive equipment. Indoors, you have to provide the water, and it should come through reverse osmosis water, and you're going to have to buy equipment and filter your water to get it down to 0 parts per million, because regular tap water is full of bad stuff, and most well water is full of bad stuff. Most rainwater is full of bad stuff. You're going to need to put reverse osmosis in your house to get the kind of water that cannabis plants love to drink. You've got to be able to control.
Now, wait a minute. Wait a minute.
Go ahead.
I thought it was ditchweed.
Right, okay. Let me explain something about the marijuana plant. It will grow under the worst conditions and give you some bud. But what I'm talking about, and what I want you to do, and this goes for all areas of your life, if you're going to do it, you do it for maximum optimization of your inputs and your outputs. So it's true, you could use inferior water to grow marijuana, outdoors or indoors. But if you want the best marijuana, the cleanest marijuana, the tastiest marijuana, the fastest growing marijuana, the marijuana that has the highest percentage of THC and other cannabinoids, you're going to use the purest inputs you can get, and that includes reverse osmosis water. Yes, it's a weed, but like orchids and bonsai trees and other specialty crops, the better you treat it, the better it's going to treat you.
May I ask another question here?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I can see the tap water routine. I mean, I don't drink that stuff.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But what's wrong with my spring water?
Well, there might not be anything wrong with your spring water. And what you want to do, if you want to use your spring water, test it. See how many parts per million it has in it.
What are we afraid of?
We're afraid of poisons that come from industrial agriculture, from industry, from air pollution, and we're also afraid of too high levels of natural minerals, which in small amounts, like calcium and iron, and natural in some well water, in some groundwater, but they can be too much for the cannabis plant and interfere with the absorption of other nutrients that your plant needs for healthy growth and big buds.
Okay, that makes sense. So what's wrong with rainwater?
Rainwater, unfortunately, in a lot of areas in this country is acidified, and it's bringing down toxic pollution from the air pollution that's in many of our even our rural areas. So rainwater might be the purest water you can get if you don't want to pay for reverse osmosis equipment, but I would have the rainwater tested and see what's in it, especially for acidification. Marijuana plants like a root zone that has a certain level of acidification versus alkalinity. That's called pH. And you could have the best intentions in the world, you could have the best marijuana genetics in the world, the best soil in the world, but if your water is pH 5.0, it's too acid for your plants and they won't grow if at all. If your water is 7.5, it's too alkaline for your plants and your plants won't grow well, if at all. Marijuana is like running an aquarium in your home. You got to know a few things about oxygenation, about water quality, about chemistry in order to make it work, even if you're outdoors.
Okay, that's water. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, that's right. No, these are the kind of questions people in the audience are asking. I want you to have security. I want you to have control over your inputs. Now, one of the biggest things that I can tell you is this. There's a huge debate. It's almost like a religious debate in the marijuana community that goes between outdoor marijuana and indoor marijuana, hydroponics marijuana versus soil-grown marijuana, marijuana grown, quote, organically versus marijuana grown with, quote, synthetic fertilizers. I got to tell you, okay, you can grow incredible marijuana using any of those techniques I just mentioned. But for the sake of security and absolute control over your growing situation, I personally prefer indoor grown marijuana. And I got to tell you, this is really hilarious. And I discovered this when I first started growing. Out of all the companies in the world that make fertilizers for plants, some of them are corporate criminals like Monsanto and their allies, which like Scott's Miracle-Gro. Don't use that stuff. It's bad stuff. Those people are in bed with the drug warriors. Monsanto and Scott's make poisons that the drug warriors use to spray on marijuana plants and coca plants in other countries. The first thing I did when I started growing indoors was to find a fertilizer. And I went around to all the fertilizer companies that were selling in grow stores, what's called hydroponic stores, grow shops. I called up those companies. I go, hi, I'm a marijuana grower, and I want to find out how your click. They would hang up on me. All of the big companies that were selling fertilizer to marijuana growers wouldn't talk to marijuana growers. And this is when it was medically legal in California. I found one company. It's called Advanced Nutrients. The guy who runs the company has been a marijuana grower since the 1970s. He's grown in cornfields. He's grown in massive warehouses in Canada. He's had the police come on him and put him in shackles because of it. He decided that he would make a marijuana fertilizer and nutrients company that would create products that were specifically targeted to give marijuana growers what they want. Here's what you want as a marijuana grower. Number one, you want your plants to grow as fast as possible so that they mature as soon as possible, so that you can put them into bloom phase as soon as possible, and so that they finish bloom phase as soon as possible. That's one thing you want, is speed. Number two, you want plants that have absolutely no contaminants inside of the plant tissues at the time of harvest. When you harvest that plant, you do not want to have sprayed it with poison, and many growers do this, including commercial, legal, corporate marijuana growers. And this is why I totally oppose corporate marijuana growing laws like what you saw sponsored up in Ohio, Issue 3, that was defeated, thank God, on November 3rd. Watch out for what's happening in this country, which is the groundswell of grassroots counterculture marijuana resistance that people like Al and Mary Lynn and tens of thousands of others have created all the years to make marijuana so popular. Now, when people in the government want to do, quote, legalization, what they want to do is stop home growing and give licenses to massive corporate growers, and those massive corporate growers are using inputs, including spraying stuff on the plants during the flowering phase, and if you spray it on it during bloom phase, you're going to be smoking it. Don't believe it when you read on the back of a foliar spray bottle that says that you can spray this on a plant right up until harvest. It's not true. When your plants are flowering, don't spray anything on them except reverse osmosis water or clean rainwater or clean well water, because what sprays on it stays on it, and you smoke it and you hurt your lungs. Another thing I want for you when you're growing, filter the inputs that come into your grow room. That includes your air. All kinds of things love marijuana, not just humans. Bugs love marijuana. Rabbits love marijuana. Deer love marijuana. Fungi loves marijuana. Mold loves marijuana. All kinds of pathogens, diseases, and viruses love marijuana. If you've got a marijuana grow room or you're growing outdoors, and this is one reason I don't grow outdoors very much, if you're growing outdoors, you've got so many things that want to come in and eat up your crop. So many people that want to come and rip off your crop, and so many things that are invisible that can get into your buds and destroy your crop virtually overnight. You know, like I'm sure that Alice met patients who've had outdoor marijuana, big, thick buds, right near harvest time. All of a sudden, they look at their bud and it's turning gray and black. It's the dreaded gray mold. Or you're right near harvest time, you look at your buds and there's these weird webs all over them, spider mites. Or you're getting right near harvest time, beautiful smelling buds, and all of a sudden the leaves start looking like somebody sprinkled sand and glued it onto the leaves from you. And if you even try and smoke those buds or inhale them with a vaporizer, you are going to hurt your lungs and give yourself, in some cases, a respiratory illness. I want you to grow safe and clean marijuana. If you use advanced nutrients, fertilizers, and nutrients, it's safe and clean. When you use other stuff, it will stay in your crops. You're smoking, in some cases. Some unsavory hydroponics nutrients companies use something called Paclo, which is a plant growth regulator or hormone. Yeah, it's called bud swell. It makes your buds grow a lot fatter and more resiny. However, it's a carcinogen. You've got to be really careful. 90% of the products that you see in the nutrient section of a hydroponics grow store are not really good for your crops. You've got to be very careful. Now, another thing that we have to talk about, we haven't talked about yet, and we may come upon a break here, is how do you select the right marijuana for you? People think that there's a generic division in marijuana of only two major categories, indica versus sativa. I've got to tell you, that's misleading, and maybe if we're getting close to the break.
Oh, we are break time, yeah. Why don't we hold that in suspense?
All right.
Bring all the people back with
All right,
Casper, here we go.
You are listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. Please share us with your friends.
Serious Seeds is your source for quality cannabis and sativa seeds. Serious Seeds are the creators of legendary strains like AK-47, Bubblegum, Chronic, Cali Mist, and White Russian. The AK-47 is probably the most awarded strain on the planet. The high THC content of AK-47 makes it the perfect medical strain for patients seeking quick pain relief. Cali Mist is an almost pure sativa. Female medical cannabis patients have reported that this strain helps relieve menstrual cramps. Serious Seeds just acquired another Dutch high-quality seed bank, Magus Genetics. From now on, Serious Seeds can offer you even more award-winning strains. The fine folks at Serious Seeds strive to breed the best cannabis genetics that they can find, so patients can rely on the effectiveness of their medicine. Go to SeriousSeeds.com to grow your medicine. That site again is SeriousSeeds.com.
Yes, stay alert with consciousness. Realize that there is a world around you, and if we just police ourselves, we don't need the police policing us. That's called being courteous to the world around you. Your freedom ends where it begins to impose on someone else. That's all you got to keep in mind. And then we can politely get back to having cannabis as a medicine and as a medible and an edible and a cash crop that can help benefit the entire world. With that said, I pass this joint conversation back to my joint host here on Time for Hemp.
I'm sorry, Mary Lynn's not here to get all this information because this should be heard by all patients, male or female. This is all kinds of things to think about. Patients at a time, of course, the organization has thought about this for a couple of decades now, and here's our take as an organization. It's mine too, personally, that medical cannabis should be available to all, that all that feel that they can do it, that it would be helpful, that they have the opportunity, should be able to grow their own. But with the same earnestness, I also say, and Patients at a Time says, that we would love to have people like Steve Davis grow our cannabis on I say a commercial basis, but we're not talking Monsanto here. But we're talking cottage industry where professionals can grow for a large number of patients, but then those patients, maybe they don't have a green thumb. Maybe they're just too sick when it starts up. Whatever. They want better stuff, and Steve knows how to do it. So I got one question from the past. I missed the exact pH that I should grow my cannabis at if I was a patient. Could you start there?
Okay. I'm going to tell you. Marijuana will grow under a wide range of conditions, but its root zone, its roots, will absorb nutrition and oxygen and moisture fastest and best if the pH of the root zone is within a very narrow range. And what the scientists at the Advanced Nutrients Company have discovered is that range is about 5.6 pH, which is slightly going towards acid, to about 6.3 to 6.5 at the highest. Your roots can absorb most of the nutrients, oxygen and water that they need if you go outside of that range, but if you go outside of it by too much, your roots will die, your plants won't grow properly, if at all. So pH control requires buying something called a pH meter, and many of them are no good, so ask at your grow store which ones are reliable and have a warranty. And you also have to buy fluids, pH up and pH down. Most of you will find that your water is not naturally within the range of 5.7 to 6.3, and that you'll have to micro-adjust your water to get it exactly right for your plants. And I know that's a little technical, but we did have questions from some of our viewers. Now, I want to tell you some other things here. First of all, strain selection. The idea that marijuana is only indica or sativa. Indica being a shorter plant with big fat leaves and big fat buds, and when you smoke it, it couch locks you. It sedates you. It helps you with pain. It helps you with worry. It helps you with ADHD. It helps you with insomnia. But it leaves you pretty much crippled. It's a downing kind of a high. Then the other idea is that there's something called sativa. Sativa tend to be taller plants with thinner leaves and smaller buds, and sativa tends to be stimulating. Those two generic classifications used to be pretty much agreed on by everybody, but researchers have discovered there's a whole lot more to cannabis than that. We don't have the time to go into it, but Al's told me he's going to invite me back on the show. What I want you to know is that these days the idea of indica versus sativa is not as relevant as for you to go on websites like the magazine that I'm the editor of, the only marijuana magazine made by growers for growers. It's called BigBudsMag.com, BigBudsMag.com, and look up specific strains or put in PTSD. You'll find on our website we've got a 5-part series written by a person suffering from PTSD who went from start to finish by being absolutely crippled by PTSD, discovered a counselor who would work with him and marijuana, discovered a strain of marijuana that he could use to get rid of PTSD trigger memories and symptoms, and today is PTSD. It's called BigBudsMag.com. But when you want to select marijuana for yourself, read the descriptions of marijuana that you can find on the web. Read High Times. Buy books like Dank 2.0 or The Big Book of Buds, and look at the descriptions of marijuana and see which ones say that they have the effects that you think you might need. Appetite enhancement, pain relief, relaxation, that you feel depressed and you don't want to feel depressed, that you might have glaucoma and you want your intraocular pressure to be relieved. You can find strains for you, and then as you grow them, you can modify them through breeding and make them perfect. Now, I want to tell you this about marijuana. Good marijuana is going to take you from start to finish, from seed to harvest. It's going to take you at least 9 weeks, if not more. If you're growing outdoors, you have less control over that, and it could take you a lot longer than that. You can also grow marijuana from clone, and clones, of course, are cuttings from larger plants. The benefit of clone is you know exactly what the plant was you cut it from. You know exactly how it's going to grow. You know that it's a female. I want you to know this. Marijuana comes in 2 genders, male and female. In most cases, nobody wants the male plants because they don't produce buds. They don't produce female flowers, which have the highest level of THC and other cannabinoids. But males are good for breeding purposes, and breeding marijuana is an absolute joy, and that's how you can get. I look at the way it is right now, and Al mentioned it. In this country right now, the big corporate people, the police, the money people, the venture capitalists, they want to have a corporate marijuana industry where we can't really grow our own. They'll grow it all for us, and it's all going to be generic brands. I believe that what should be good is what Al talked about, a cottage industry. You know what they call craft beer? We want craft marijuana. We want craft marijuana. We don't need these big beer companies making our beer for us. We can make it ourselves. We don't need big corporate marijuana growers like you see in Colorado or like they tried to have in Ohio.
Can I have a but?
Yeah, go ahead.
But we agree. I still agree. But if you're gonna be a cottage industry and you're going to grow medical grade cannabis, there has to be somewhere where that cannabis is funneled through a laboratory, a check system, so it's clean, it meets all the specs you want, okay?
I'll tell you what, people...
That's all. I mean, I hate regulations, but you understand what I'm saying?
I hear you on that, and there's 2 ways to go with that. And the best small-scale home growers who serve themselves and their patients the best, they will voluntarily take their weed to the kind of lab Al is talking about, so that you know exactly what the cannabinoid profile, you know how much THC, how much CBD, how much CBN, how many terpenoids and what ratios. Not only that, but you know there's no spider mite bodies on those buds. Right. There's no avid pesticide or herbicide or whatever.
Just like one of these local beer guys, I trust their product.
Right.
You know.
If it has to go through some kind of a examination process so you know it's clean. And if you grow it yourself, you're gonna know for sure that stuff is clean because you grew it. You're sitting there in that grow room or outdoors with your plants, looking at them with magnifying glasses and making sure there's no bugs in there. There's nobody spraying poison on that stuff. It's not getting polluted through the nutrients you're using because you're using advanced nutrients, which is the only nutrients made for marijuana. Total control. Either way, safety first, specificity first. Grow the marijuana for you or procure it. If you don't want to grow or you can't grow, find somebody like me. Find somebody who's a cottage grower. Tell them what your needs are, and then they will come back to you with 5 strains that might work for you. Choose a couple of strains, let them grow that strain out for you, and remember, I mean, I'm not advocating quote unquote breaking the law, but black market growers have been the bread and butter and the heart and soul of the medical cannabis movement. Without the people who've risked their lives all these years and risked their freedom to grow your cannabis, there wouldn't be a medical cannabis world. It's because of the people who risked everything to grow cannabis that we have cannabis right now.
Well, that's true.
It really is true. People slag black market growers. In the Ohio Issue 3 thing, people are like, oh, I want to buy from corporate, so I don't have to buy from these black market growers. You know what? Black market grower, at any moment, can have the police put guns to his head. Black market growers and sellers of marijuana have been shot and murdered in this country, and not even the police were prosecuted or even suspended without pay. I'm telling you, when you're a black market marijuana grower or a home legal medical marijuana grower or a medical marijuana provider or a medical marijuana consultant or a medical marijuana nurse or activist like Al Byrne and Marilyn Mathery, you are a revolutionary who has changed this country. I'd say even more than the gay rights movement. The marijuana movement has changed a war and defeated an actual military war on our own soil against us, and people like Mark Emery going to prison for 5 years for selling seeds when real criminals go for less time. You got to really realize that this plant is a form of peaceful revolution where people say, I don't want to be relying on doctors and pharmaceutical companies. I know that marijuana makes me feel good. I want to grow it myself or have somebody grow it for me, and darn it, it's gonna happen.
But we're gonna have to go, folks. I just, full disclosure, I'd just like to admit, or just let you all know that the Advanced Nutrients Company in the past has generously provided some funding to Patients at a Time to help us with our ongoing cannabis educational series, which again deals only with medical cannabis issues. The series is accredited, as Steve said, and you can find information about the series at medicalcannabis.com or patientsatatime.org. The next conference in the series will be the 10th, and it will be held in Baltimore, Maryland, in mid-April. I haven't got the exact dates in my head, but right around the 12th, 13th, 14th of April. So you go to any of our websites and we'll keep you abreast of how that's developing. I also want to say that if you go to the website that Steve mentioned, what was it again? Big Buds?
BigBudsMag.com, the only magazine made by growers for growers, and it also has articles about marijuana as an aphrodisiac.
And we're gonna forgive Steve that he says marijuana all the time instead of cannabis, and he says post-traumatic stress disorder instead of post-traumatic stress. But you know, he's a grower. He's not right in there with what I do. So it's okay, Steve.
Thank you.
But I just wanted to again say that if you go to that website, you'll see that there's a few articles there by me. And of course, I think that they're quite informative and quite well written. Anyway, come back next week, same time, same place. We'll have another cannabis expert from around the world here to discuss some aspect of medical cannabis. Until then, this is Al Byrne for Patients at a Time. Take care.
And this is Casper to remind you that we are a 24-hour day, 7-day a week, all cannabis, all the time broadcasting network with an amazing stable of personalities dedicated to ending prohibition. And like a good joint, we are best when shared with friends. We want to make it a point to have you share us with your friends. All of the programs that are on the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network are also found in the archives of all of our hosts. If you have a program that you particularly enjoy, you can find all of the past programs from that host on their archive page. MP3s are free to download, and of course, we encourage you to share them with your friends. And remember, the next time you hear me, you'll know that it's time for hemp.
Look at all that money, yeah, the money that they spent. Take another time for hemp. Don't cut trees for paper, cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yes.
You are listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. Please share us with your friends.